Hi, and welcome to Dynamics Update. This time we will be talking about the version 10.0.33, and with me as usual I have my colleague Gustav Sundblad. Hello.
Hello, my dear colleague Johan.
I hope everything is well with you.
I'm great, thanks. How are you?
I'm so looking forward to a new version and a new podcast. That's always.
Oh yeah, exactly. It's spring feeling, right? It's the weather is thawing up outside, and we have a new version to look at. So what's not to like?
Awesome. So I thought you would get started this time.
Great. There are a lot of like smaller and larger ones as well. So I'm just going to jump straight in. No specific ordering here. Commerce is a favorite topic. I noticed a feature for asynchronous customer orders. Basically what it is, it's creation of customer orders. The story between commerce and Dynamics backend has always been some of the features and some of the functionality has been performance intense, like creation of customers, on-hand calls, and to mitigate this, the asynchronous pattern has been implemented for a lot of them, customer orders being one of them, where you now have the option of doing a parameter where you can try to create the customer order in real time, synchronous, so it gets instantly created in back office, and it's in the back end, and it's available to other resources. But this feature allows for a fallback option. So if for any reason you cannot reach backend, or the connection is down, it falls back to asynchronous. So it will try to reach and create the order. If it doesn't, it falls back to async, where it creates it in the channel database instead, and then syncs the order up. So it's a enhancement to improve order creation as well, but the user experience for the point of sale users. So it's faster. And you get the confirmation number. You don't get the actual sales order number, of course, because the SO number is then generated when the batch job syncs it up, but you get the confirmation number. So the fallback option is great.
Yes, that's cool. So my first one is actually an awesome simplification, I thought, that I heard of for the first time this week. So one of the things that I have noticed when I work with AX and FNO is that printing is really, really, really complicated. You need to set up printers, you need to create printing jobs, you need to have templates, and there is a lot of work that goes into having your first printout.
Yeah.
And so I really appreciate this one. The thing is that one of the new features has to do with label printing, and in this case what you can do is that you can create a new, just a label template, basically, and connect it to your random screen within FNO. So from the FNO workspace, you can select the record and just print label, and it's done. So I really thought that was a really good way of doing it, actually.
Yeah. That's very cool, and I think that the whole printer set. I used to work as a network technician and printer, not printer technician. So that I think the one of the most frustrating amounts of work is getting printers to work in any ecosystem. But just the fact with different printer drivers and label printers are. Maybe I'm like causing someone to not like me here, but label printers like the ZPL language. It's really. I think I look at the documentation here. And they included an example of how to print to that label, and the functionality I agree, it's great, and makes it easier to like solve at this receiving or at this warehouse or whatever, print a label for me. It's very nice, but you still need to understand ZPL language, right? But now I think maybe ChatGPT can do that for me. Give me ZPL code. That's something I really have to try out. Give me ZPL code for doing this and this and this. That's maybe a good enhancement here to making this actually work. Most cases you already have that language or the code needed to improve your label, but that's where ChatGPT can help out.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I used to work as like an infrastructure technician, and the printers sucks in every way, shape, and form. But the thing is that if you put them together with an ERP system, they suck even more.
Yeah.
So they no, I don't like printers. I actually think we should ban printers altogether because they never work.
Everything would work so much better if we didn't use printers. Yeah, I agree completely. Not only from an environmental perspective, also from like a worker mental health perspective.
Yes.
I think it makes a lot of sense, right?
Yes. So what's your next one?
So working off the list, one just something to mention here. We've brought this up, I think, on numerous occasions before, and it's been broadcast before. The API limits, the enforcement of the API limits in this version 10.33, the service protection API limits are now mandatory. So you cannot disable them. You cannot work around them once you go to this version. And I have to stress it a lot because I think hopefully it won't lead to any severe issues if you've done your homework or if you maybe not even suffer from the limits that are in place. But it's super critical to understand these implications if you have integration patterns that rely on a lot of API calls from the same user or the same service, because you will need to implement the retry patterns, basically, like busy signal, to put it simply. So read up on the service protection API limits before you go to version 33.3, because otherwise you will get problems in your integrations if you are in the vicinity of these limits, so to speak. So if you use recurring integrations patterns or stuff like that, you won't be affected.
Yeah, and I think it's also went up to the top of the most asked fast track questions in your pre-go live workshop. Have you looked at the API limits so that you don't bump into them? Which is fully relevant because it's
yeah, absolutely.
The problem with the API limits, I would say, is that so I'm going to use the wrong word here, but from a user perspective, they are sort of arbitrary because there is no pattern. There is a number of API calls you can do in 20 minutes. But the problem is that you never know, whatever you do, how many API calls does that cause? Because it could be 1, it could be 21, and it greatly affects the way the system works. So as you said, if you're going to use OData, you need to have like a retry process from your integration components so that it doesn't affect the users. And it needs to be a really, really stable one, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. So, it's like the 10th time I think this is mentioned as well. So just bear it in mind and hopefully no issues. And the point is to ensure stability in the platform, right? So it makes a lot of sense to adhere to it. I had to just mention I had ChatGPT open, so I tried asking it to write me how to print Gustav as a barcode label. It just did it and explained how it's done as well. So if you have a need to combine the new feature that you want to mention about custom labels and actually understanding ZBL language, I can recommend it. You can use Bing now as well, as maybe ask Bing to do it. It's very cool.
That's perfect.
Sorry, I had a sidetrack, but that was really excellent. Yeah. So, Johan, do you have what's your next point?
So my next one is actually a preview. It's not something going GA in 10.033, but it's actually a new thing that's coming in preview, and it has to do with pricing management. And one of the reasons that I am bringing this up right now instead of in the release where it's actually going to be released is that I think this will greatly affect the processes of how you manage pricing within a solution. So if you're already on F&O, you probably need to do your homework on this one. I think it can greatly improve the product, but it will also require a whole lot of work, I'm guessing, to get it up and running. So it's definitely a reason why you should have an environment where you have something in preview.
Yeah, absolutely. I've set this up a little bit and tried elaborating with it because it's really, and I share your opinion too, even though it's preview, try to experiment with it and try to combine it to fulfill your needs. But it's really combining the best of two worlds, where it's been like this huge gap between B2B scenarios using trade agreements and a lot of advanced functionality there as well, but and the whole omni-channel B2C, like the CSU and the pricing engine there. Combining these two is, it makes a lot of sense, right? Because you can use the best of two worlds and you can do adaptive pricing using these attributes. But it requires some homework, and it requires an understanding. Basically, as with any functionality, make sure that you understand what you're trying to achieve first. I think that makes the best sense. What do we actually want here? If trade agreements are a perfect fit for you because you work the fixed list pricing, maybe this is not a feature that you actually need to implement. But it has a lot of good benefits, and I implore you to try it out.
Yes, cool.
All right, is it me?
Yes.
Am I next? Well, speaking of complexity, I think this has been up. It's not a new feature in this release, but they've done some enhancement to it, and I wanted to bring it up again. The financial tags part, the integration with the ledger settlements, the automated process. We discussed this briefly in an interview as well before, and I've read up on it to try to understand differences between financial tags. There's actually a very good, if you just look at docs, there is a good one-pager explaining the differences between financial dimensions and financial tags, because that was me not being a finance expert. It helped me out a lot. But they are very cool. It's basically just 20-character field that allows for custom input. And it seems very simple, and it is, but as it's integrated into the journal and the settlement processing, it opens up this... I'm not going to say the Swedish word smorgasbord, but I'm saying it anyway. It opens up some possibilities for settlements, or using reporting BI perhaps, where you don't have to adhere to the very rigid financial dimension structure, where you need to take the system into maintenance mode. It's very rigid with good sense, because it's tied to the reporting structure, but the financial tags, when they're enabled, they are popping up on journals and documents now. So it's a good thing to look at if you have the need to find and settle specific documents, specific groupings. And I think they're a very good, helpful tool, the way I understand them. So, and they are improved in this version.
That's good. Okay, so the next one is actually one that I think we have bumped into in the project that I'm in right now, and it has to do with supply chain and specifically management of shipping containers. So in this case, it's actually a feature which lets you batch processing of containers, so you can actually send them in as one batch instead of having to manually go through the entire inventory of the container and handle them. This is also one of those features that are in preview right now, but I think it's a really useful one. And if this is the one that we bumped into, then it actually gives you a lot better performance when you handle like big batches of things.
Mm-hmm. So, performance improvement.
Yes.
And it ties a little bit into the order one before, that the whole, as much as you can alleviate from this synchronous, please wait part of the system, the better. And the more you can put into the batch and let the system work for you, the better. Always been a good selling point.
Yes.
All right, I have my next one, and this has been discussed as well before. I think the whole range of topics, the archiving part. I think the archiving of inventory transactions is the feature that's listed in 10.33, together with archiving of sales orders as well. And what it is, it's basically a feature to archive your probably quite large inventory transaction table, InvenTrans, and all those related tables as well. Historically, I think InvenTrans and all the inventory tables, together with maybe retail transaction payment tables and stuff like that, has always been like the top 10 disk usage of the SQL part. And it's quite clear, I think we discussed this before as well, Johan, the archiving components here coming into play are really important to ensure long-term life, as well as, I mean, from Microsoft's standpoint, of course, it's managing the platform, but it makes a lot of sense for us, of course, to archive to ensure performance and stability. So look into your archiving solutions. The inventory transactions is the one I'm most interested in because it has a tendency to grow. That table quite large, especially if you're working in both like sales and supply chain. But also there are a number of archiving tools available. The payment details archiving job from commerce side, because that table grows so large due to all of the like blob. So that's saved for payment details, and it's not really necessary to store that type of information for long. So you can archive it and save some space.
Yeah, and I think also one important part of this is that when Microsoft launched F&O, or as it was called back then, AX7, the thing was that the amount of data in the database was actually hard capped at a much lower level than we see today. And it was also that if you needed to buy extra storage, that it actually cost a lot of money to do so. The thing is that Microsoft hasn't enforced the database limits. So there are actually customers that have like 400% the maximum amount of data in their database. Not to speak about the binary blob storage as well. So the thing is that Microsoft is going to enforce this limit of database. But the thing is they can't do that until there is a way to actually clean it out. So there is a lot, Gustav talked a lot about like retail transactions and so on, but there are also a lot of other data sources that end up in the database. For instance, if you're using the entity store and other more technical ones that are also ending up in the database that you actually don't have any way of handling. It needs to, today for instance, it needs to be put into a support case with Microsoft. So there need to be maintenance jobs for these tables to empty them out, to archive them in a certain amount of time and so on. And those are what we are seeing that are starting to end up in the release notes now. So we are going to have to get used to actually moving things out of the database. We're not used to that when we have an on-prem database, because we could often just add a couple of extra disk or an extra SAN or something like that. But we don't really have that option now. And that's also because both because of performance, but also because Microsoft don't want to have to archive things, to keep things in the database forever and ever and ever. So in order to have a lean database, you need to remove things. You shouldn't remove things that you have legal requirements around, of course, but there are a lot of things that you can remove that you just haven't removed before because you didn't need to. So you need to look into that.
Exactly. Prudent data maintenance. It's always a good sense to keep track. It's a cloud system, SaaS solution, but it's still data, right? It's still filling up.
I actually think it could be a very good exercise for basically any customer of F&O to go through what they are spending their data allowance on and what legal requirements they have, because I don't actually think that there are, I'm guessing that there are actually customers that doesn't really know specifically exactly what they are allowed to remove and what they are not allowed to remove.
No, exactly. And that's complex, right? I mean, not only from a legal perspective, how many years do I need to store these? It's also from like now with regulatory, like you need to store a certain amount of data within the borders, etc. So that's a whole range of topics to be discussed. But I think the archiving features here, of course, make sure you do your homework and employ like external storage, but they are mainly meant to be performance enhancement and storage reduction.
Yes.
for your system.
Yes.
All right.
With that, I think we're actually more or less done for today. If you don't have anything else you would like to mention.
I have one just small tiny. Just I noticed that there was enhancements to the prospect to cache scenario, the standardized scenario of dual write integration between CE and FNO. I haven't tried this out myself, but I understood that this release has several improvements in that scenario to enhance the efficiency. So if you have looked into that scenario before and kind of found it coming short because of some key issues with it, maybe worth investigating it again because this release has a lot of improvements to it, as I understand. It's more on the pricing and the quotation handling, and it supports like state transitionings going back and forth. So it's more of an actual dual write scenario, and not like once you click it, you can't go back, as I understand it was a little bit before. So worth looking into if you have those needs.
Yep. All right. And with that, I think we have to say goodbye for tonight. Hear from you again. Bye bye.
Bye bye. Thank you.